Dave Trabert's here with the Kansas Policy Institute on KCMO. Last week, we told you about how Chris Kobach, the Attorney General in Kansas, was urging the Department of Education to open up an investigation against 4 school districts in Kansas after they allegedly refused to comply with the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act and are socially transitioning children without their parents' knowledge. Kobach wrote about 4 of these school districts in Kansas, and 3 of them are right here in our backyard: Shawnee Mission, Olathe, KCK, and Topeka were the ones that Kobach wanted investigated. Dave Trabert is here on KCMO. Dave, this beef, the schools are saying that they're not doing this social transitioning stuff. Kobach is saying they are. So how are we supposed to interpret what's going on here?
Well, good morning, Pete. Thanks for having me. It's honestly hard to say what's going on at the school districts because they're being very cagey. And I haven't seen everything that they've said in response, but I've not seen anything where they came right out and said, yeah, we're doing this, go away. But the implication is that they are because of the way that they're responding. They're not saying, no, we're not. No, come look. It's just an act of defiance. And once again, it's demonstrating that many school districts are putting politics and other things ahead of educating students. I mean, these are all these districts you mentioned. The best ones have maybe 45% of kids proficient and a quarter of them below grade level. Topeka and Kansas City, Kansas are much worse.
That's a good point. Now, for those that don't know, social transitioning is a change in name, pronoun, or identity while at school or in school activities. So basically, if little Johnny wants to be referred to in school as little Sally, but then goes back to being Johnny at home because he doesn't want his parents to know, the schools will basically play along in this game. That is, it's such a gray area, Dave, because it's so hard to prove that's going on, right, in these schools. So I don't even know how you... As much as I am obviously in support of Kobach trying to do this and making sure this is not happening, I don't know how you prove it either way. Well,
it can be because the law that you mentioned is FERPA. That's the Privacy Act. That's what they're saying is you're doing this and not telling parents. If they were telling parents, that'd be a whole different issue. But this is preventing parents from knowing what's happening with their kids. It's another time that you have some people in education saying the kids are ours, not the parents.
That's a good point. Dave Trabert's here on KCMO. Now, the other thing that Attorney General Kobach did last week is write a letter warning the Kansas State Board of Education that language in the school lunch contract districts are required to sign is in violation of federal law. Please explain to me how we are having a conversation about gender identity and school lunch contracts. What is that all about?
Well, actually, there's another development that just came in late yesterday. Now, the Department of Education is telling superintendents that it's not their decision to make, that Laura Kelly's Department of Administration sets the rules for what goes into contracts for agencies. We have in writing. It's not our decision. It's the Department of Administration. Why in the world, if that's true, why in the world would the Kelly administration be ordering the Department of Education to put something in a contract that we all know violates? Because they want to, it's the same thing as the previous issue we discussed. To Laura Kelly, it's more important that her politics, whether they're legal or not, her politics are taking priority over educating kids.
But what's the beef here on the school lunch contracts?
Well, they're saying the language that I guess now the Department of Administration wants in is that school will provide anti-discrimination. They won't discriminate against kids based on gender or sexual identity. The law says, and this was a federal court dealing with a Kansas situation, that sex protection under Title IX against discrimination does not include gender. They're still trying to put it in there. So if you do what they want, you are violating the rights of biological girls.
So this is really about getting federal dollars to fund school lunches. Is that what this is about?
Well, that's the threat they're holding out. If you don't do what we say, you can lose federal money.
But who's threatening that? Because I thought Biden was doing that, and I would assume that would have fallen by the wayside.
Well, Biden did it back April of 24.
Yeah.
And courts ruled that over the summer it was supposed to go into effect August 1. And court said, no, you can't do that. Injunctions were granted. Well, now this is a different issue. Laura Kelly seems to be trying to resurrect it and try to give Title IX protection to based on gender identity when the courts say you cannot do that.
Okay, so it's really more about Governor Kelly's administration trying to put the screws to the schools in Kansas and trying to potentially withhold funding that is coming from the feds.
Right, because the U.S. Department of Education, our Department of Agriculture, administers the school lunch programs. Mm-hmm. They are not asking for this language. Their non-discrimination clause complies with the law. And there's one section on civil rights in the school lunch agreement where they use the appropriate non-discrimination language. But the last kind of the miscellaneous section of the contract is where they say, oh, by the way, you have to do this, which is in complete contradiction to what's in the civil rights contract or clause.
I see. All right. Now, what about this Supreme Court decision last week? I know there was a big religious freedom ruling that came down from the Supreme Court. It got a little bit overlooked with a lot of the decisions that came out on Friday from the Supreme Court. What was that decision, and why does it matter here in Kansas and Missouri?
Well, the decision the case was Mahmoud versus Taylor, and there were a group of parents in a Maryland school district who wanted to opt their kids out of instruction that included materials that violated their religious beliefs, and most of it had to do with gender identity and transition. And the court said that court granted the injunction, which means that school district must allow those parents to opt their kids out. Now, it only applies because it was an injunction for a single district. It only applies to that district. It's a pretty clear signal, especially when you're reading comments to the justices. It's a really clear signal.
Yeah.
Anyone who brings this to the case is going to prevail. Now,
interesting. Hang on, Dave. The phone's getting real choppy on us. Just check on that phone for me. We'll get him back on here for a minute or so. I don't know what happened there, but that was the phone went way off the rails on Dave Trabert there. But the Mahmoud v. Taylor case was Maryland parents. They got this to the Supreme Court, and we will put a bow on this part of the conversation with Dave Trabert as soon as we can get him reconnected here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM, and we are always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. So what this means for Kansas and Missouri, Dave, the floor is yours. How would you put a bow on why Missouri and Kansas parents should be following that case and what the results could mean back here at home?
Well, regardless of the case, but especially because of the case, every school district should have an opt-out policy so that any parent who doesn't want their kids involved in anything controversial, whether it violates their religious beliefs or it's just something that they want to deal with in the privacy of their home, there should be opt-out. A lot of school districts prefer the opt-in, and so the default is your kid's going to get exposed to it. What they should be doing, especially because of this court ruling now, is revising all of their policies to opt out. So whenever they think something is potentially hitting those thresholds, you notify parents in writing that this is going to take place and give them time to sign the opt-out form.
That is great. You know, we actually had a situation like that with our kindergartner here in the last year, obviously, and we elected to opt her out. But what about even taking it one step further and you give the parents time to opt in if they so choose to opt in? If not, you assume that they have opted out. How about that?
Right. There should be, and it should be opt-in.
Yeah.
That would be, opt-in would be the ideal, so that whenever you notify, whenever it comes up, you say, here, this is happening. You have to opt in or we won't.
Yeah.
That's the ideal situation.
Okay.
And again, why are you doing it in the first place?
Well,
the mission
yes.
is to teach kids how to read and write and do math.
Mm-hmm.
Do that, which has a long way to go before it's where kids are getting the education they need. Focus on your mission.
That's so true. I'm with you there. Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute. Always good to talk to you, my man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Pete.
All right. Well done there. He's right about that. Ultimately, it is about just misplaced priorities at the very top, focusing on the things that matter. And in an ideal world, it's opt in, but at least giving time to opt out of certain things is definitely a step in the right direction.